There's a clicker if you want, or you can use the arrows.
I'm not going to go through my introduction again. Okay.
Probably just taking a moment. Actually, no, I think it's the left. Yeah, you have to use the left.
Okay. So I think Charles talked about this definition too of e-enterprise, which is the long, lengthy bureaucratic definition of, but come away with a few key ideas of this. E-enterprise is about modernizing and streamlining programs and then applying technology, and working together in a joint governance fashion with EPA, states, and tribes for the result of better environmental protection and efficiency. So why do we need e-enterprise? I was still thinking the Cadillac Tesla model there. But basically, I think our our deputy administrator, Bob Perciasepi, said it best when he was thinking, how can he tells the story of ordering his bag from LL Bean, and he could track his bag from the time it left LL Bean until the time it arrived on his doorstep, and he could do it all from his computer or smartphone, and he couldn't do the same for hazardous waste. Now, I know that eManifest is now addressing that, but a lot of our programs are still at the part where we're not up to the 21st century modern world, and there's the need for e-enterprise. So e-enterprise has three major goals. The first goal is modernize business practices, and that's streamlining programs and then applying technology. And a good example of that is electronic reporting. Goal 2 is enhancing our services to users, and that's reducing our burden for transactions with environmental agencies, and it's increasing our transparency. And some of the examples of that might be the portal work, like the water portal that was shown earlier today, smart forms. Goal 3 is joint governance, EPA, tribes, and states. So why do we need all three, and why do we seek alignment between the three of them? Without streamlining reform and culture change, IT simply automates outdated, inefficient processes. Without states and tribes, we end up with fragmented results. On joint governance, the model of joint governance for e-enterprise is exactly modeled on the Exchange Network. And right now we have an e-enterprise leadership council with 10 states, 10 EPA reps. We have one observer from tribes right now, but we're looking for tribal representation on the e-enterprise leadership council. And we like to look at this as the old model versus the new model. So for joint governance, the old model was EPA is going to go bake a cake, and we may come to state and tribes and ask, what flavor icing do you want, chocolate or vanilla? Whereas the new model, we want to bake the cake together. We want to start at the very beginning. So I wanted to switch to talk about some projects that e-enterprise is currently scoping, which will kind of give you a flavor of the types of things e-enterprise is working on, and I think it makes it seem more real and kind of get an idea of what e-enterprise is. So the e-enterprise Leadership Council selected 5 projects for scoping out of 84 proposals last year. None of those proposals happened to be from tribes last year. And I got to say, I'm wondering if it would be a different mix of projects had tribes submitted a proposal. So we look forward to, on the next round, which I think will probably happen next year, getting tribes to submit some proposals to this. So for our 5 scoping projects, the first one was selected was the Combined Air Emissions Reporting Project. And that basically looks at taking 4 reporting programs and exploring whether they can be integrated. And integrating meaning, do they have redundant data sent to each of them. Can you align the submission timelines? They have a whole list. Nothing's off the table. What they're exploring about how to make it a less burdensome transaction for facilities who have to report to all 4 of these, or even 2 or 3 of these programs. Now, the Integrated Watershed Monitoring Scoping Project is looking at how to integrate data from various agencies on continuous monitoring within a watershed. Many of the people in this room are already working on this project. We're scoping it for a pilot phase, but I know there's ongoing conversations and work in this area. The Local Government Portal Project is looking at how we can supply better compliance assistance information and web services to small communities. And we do have a tribal representative sitting on this scoping team. And this is also looking at how we can do smart forms or wizards. So if a small community says, okay, I just became mayor or town manager, I have a drinking water system, I have a wastewater system, I have no idea what to do, point me in the right direction, that this portal would help. We also are working on a program for smart tools for inspectors. So right now when inspectors go out to the field, they take notes on a clipboard, they come back to their office, and then they input all that into a computer system. This would help them do it in real time. It also give them checklists and some data about the facility while they're there right in front of them. The pesticides label matching project is very similar to Smart Tools, only it's specific to pesticides. Right now, all the information on use of pesticides is on the label, and inspectors go in stores, they buy the product basically, or the label, take it back to their desk, have to compare it to make sure it complies. This would give them some electronic tools to either scan the label itself or have the compliance information for that particular product right in front of them when they go in to the stores or vendors. I have that twice. Compliance must have been on my mind. So that's the 5 scoping teams, and then there's one other big project that's being scoped as well right now, and that's the e-enterprise portal. And the long-term vision for the portal is to be a front door to web services and to be interoperable with EPA tribes and states. And it would be a way for the public to customize their experiences with environmental agencies. It'd be a way for regulated entities to reduce their burden, maybe have some compliance assistance, alerts, better service, reduce the burden. It's a grand vision for it, but right now we're not at the grand vision. We're at the part where we're collecting business requirements. And in that phase, this is a screenshot of a mock-up we're using to gather business requirements. We have a Federal Register notice out, and we're hosting 3 meetings, public meetings, for gathering business requirements, addressing the public, co-regulators, and regulated entities. We're also, in parallel, planning on doing tribal consultation on the portal to gather business requirements, and that will probably be in the form of a webinar, but it will be formal consultation so we can collect your ideas and business functionality and your needs within this. We also have an IPT that's looking at how do you technically do this and what's ready and when. This is a really big project. It's going to be built incrementally over time. Nobody can take this all on at once.
What's an IPT?
An integrated project team. I'm sorry. And so they're helping to also add business requirements, but see where technology is and where the opportunities are and how you would phase this in and build this in over time. And we do have tribal representation on the IPT, but we could use more. So if anybody's interested in joining that, let Kurt know. I also wanted to point out that the portal is something which I think that this is the ground floor. This would be a great time for tribal input. So I'm sure everybody's wondering, so should I give up my Cadillac, look at that Tesla? Can I keep my Cadillac? And I think that, why should you participate in e-enterprise? I think that e-enterprise projects need tribes. We need you in on the ground floor. We need you to tell us your needs and be in there with us and help us make decisions. Because I don't think we'll ever fully realize what e-enterprise is without you. But I also realize that we have to provide the opportunities and we have to meet you where you are to participate with the enterprise. So when I go back, I've been thinking with some of my colleagues here, how can we do that and what does that look like? And there are some opportunities, as I mentioned, through submitting proposals, but also, I don't know if you noticed this year through the Exchange Network grants, there was a special section for e-enterprise. I think that's going to grow over time, and I think that will be in there next year, so please apply for an e-enterprise grant. And with that, I'm going to go to questions or ask Kurt to join.
I have a question.
Sure.
Should I just yell it out? I guess, okay. You said that you have an IPT. I guess one thing that was frustrating, it still sounds like it's on the ground floor, but there was an RFP out for e-enterprise grants, and I see that we got 5, but I guess 5 were funded this year? Or
Scoping. We're doing the return on investment analysis.
Okay.
One of the principles of e-enterprise is not to invest in anything until we do a return on investment analysis. So if we don't have the results of that, we're still in the process of scoping. So it could be that it comes out that the return on investment is negative and we don't pursue that project.
Okay. So, but there was applications requested in the RFP this year for e-enterprise grant proposal, right?
Yes, for the EN,
Yeah.
the Exchange Network, part of that.
But the e-enterprise is also available in there too, in the RFP.
Right.
Okay, but so.
They're 2 separate tracks.
Okay, so you're scoping the.
We're scoping something that was selected last year.
Oh.
This year, I think in September, when the EN grants went out, there was an e-enterprise portion of that.
Yes.
So that will also bring up other new ones. I don't know what they are because I haven't reviewed the grants, but supposedly they're being reviewed right now. And whoever applied for an e-enterprise grant will know. And I don't know if any tribes applied or not, but if they did.
I didn't. So you're scoping stuff, but you've got applications coming in, and I'm sort of getting confused there.
Yeah, they're 2 separate tracks. One was to get e-enterprise going, and this was actually even before I joined e-enterprise. There was a call for proposals and that's where we got the 5 projects, and that was decided last May. And then the scoping teams were formed. It was hard. It was kind of hard to get the scoping teams to get together and gel and move forward. And at the same time, I think it's September, help me out, when the Exchange Network grant solicitation comes out, they asked for e-enterprise projects within the Exchange Network grants, and those, I guess, are being looked at or decided sometime soon, this month, I think.
This is Kurt. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
One distinction to make here that I think caused some confusion back when it was first issued is that request for project ideas that the 5 scoping teams were based on, there was no actual funding associated with that. It was really the e-enterprise leadership council going out and asking the community, hey, here's what e-enterprise is. We want to hear from you what would be some interesting and relevant project ideas that we could start to scope out around these concepts that were expressed in the blueprint. So it wasn't a solicitation in the sense that the Exchange Network grant notice is a solicitation that has a pot of funding available for it. It was really a call for ideas to scope out and see if there's any there, see if there's a positive return on investment that could be gained by then directing some funds toward them to actually look at what we might be able to do to actually build them out and implement them.
Thanks.
I have a question. The e-enterprise concept's been around for a while, and it has never been conveyed to TGG in terms of tribal participation. Why? There was chances for tribal participation back in the blueprint, and the other work teams were in e-enterprise. But why wasn't tribal participation allowed then instead of after everything's pretty much at this point right now, where proposals are already out and stuff? And now you're saying you want tribal participation now after everything's already been developed.
We have done outreach to tribes, and the acronym you used, we did it mostly to NTC through EPA's Office of International and Tribal Affairs. We've reached out and had several conversations with them and webinars and thoughts, and I think
OEI is familiar with the Tribal Governance Group. I mean, we've been formed since 2010, so I just didn't understand the miscommunication that, e-enterprise is, now you're releasing it to tribes, but even TGG didn't even know what was going on in those, past 4 years.
The blueprint stage precedes me. I've only been with the enterprise for about a year, so.
So you are correct in some sense. So I know a lot of the proposals were internal. A lot of things happened internal. And then when they realized the progression of where they wanted to go, where the stakeholders are getting involved. So we did push out to the Tribal Science Council. We did push out through email systems, and we've been trying to even now get more of a tribal representation moving forward. So yes, I do agree with you to some extent. Even when we as tribal program managers have been pushing it and were pushing it, it did lack. So I do hear that, but we've come up to speed and bringing it forward and making sure that the tribes are. So I do apologize for that, but let me know that we were reaching out.
Thanks, Amanda.
Question back here?
Sharon, this is just a 100,000-foot view question. Seems like from what I've heard today about e-enterprise, is EPA, is the ultimate vision for this, is this information sharing or is this data sharing? I mean, we've got all these different nodes. It seems like it's kind of this amalgamation of both, and I don't know if you can summarize that.
I don't think it's either. I think it encompasses both those things. I think a lot of it is program modernization and streamlining and applying that technology angle and working together with our co-regulators to make that happen. And I know we talked in earlier sessions, I grounded my presentation in projects for a reason, because I think it brings it out and it makes it more real, the kinds of things we're doing. But a lot of it is none of us can afford to build everything on our own anymore. It's the build once, use many, shared services, interoperability, making sure we have access to data and that it's integrated and that we're serving our customers. And, a lot of people now have smartphones and they expect a lot of information really quickly delivered real time. And, part of that is trying to meet some of that need.
Back here?
It's sort of disconcerting that, here we are getting apologies once again. It's not meaningful conversation. It doesn't make any difference that those proposals, requests for proposals, were funded or not. The idea of whatever was out there, whatever was available to other entities that folks like Tribal Governance Group are deeply involved, who have been there for several years, were not part of the mix. And they're just sort of, the administrator on down to the program folks tout all of this outreach and environmental justice and other programs across the EPA, but based on the Indian policy, and you said they're adhering to the Indian policy, but this is the exception. It's always been the exception, and will continue to be the exception, I'm sorry to say. Yes, go ahead.
No, I don't want you to change or misuse my words. I said, yeah, I apologize, we didn't get you on before, but there was an internal, this process is extremely new. So there was an internal push in, trying to get everything organized, getting the process through. Then looking at who are the stakeholders that we need to get involved. And we had spent time reaching out. She's come on to the group. We're moving forward, and we are looking for people to be involved. That is the step that we're in. That's the step that we've been trying to do and reaching out. So I need you to understand that the agency did do the push internally. All of these projects are internal, and now pushing out, trying to get people involved, adding to the exchange network, trying to send out different proposals and everything. That's why we're here, and that's why we're having this discussion now. We do want you involved. So please know that we're working towards that. Is there always room for improvement? Yes.
And
not trying to belittle that in any way.
the scoping projects should have states. The local government project was one that was proposed by states. So.
Just to go back to your question, ECOS was already, aware of the e-enterprise, and they already had their membership already kind of scoped out, and that just seemed like a good time for tribes to be allowed to participate as well. And I don't know if the miscommunication is between the tribal side and EPA, or is exactly where that miscommunication is.
I agree.
We were serving hand in hand on the exchange network with the ENLC governance boards. So, that would have been a good opportunity to let us know during that time that this was an initiative. At least it was going on internally.
Right. Anybody else? Well, I guess a little clarification. From this tribal member's perspective, I think that it was a little, started out as states early on, and then there was a realization that tribes weren't involved. You mentioned that you came to the NPC, but you came to the NPC late when the enterprise was already on the track, and you got, hey, what are your perspectives on this? And at that meeting, I told you, I said, hey, we're still trying to participate in the network exchange, and you got the enterprise going down the track. Those were the stuff. And then we invited an NTC member to participate in the ECOS meeting in New Mexico. It's a little late, but I appreciate it. But once again, I think the emphasis needs to be on early and often, and especially with these folks, even the ECOS and the tribal governance group, there was a disconnect there, and it just sort of is playing. We need to find a way to bring it back, fix the thing that went wrong, and let's work it together.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I've got one that's just simple, not really anything complicated, but in a screenshot a couple slides back, you showed a enterprise portal demo. Is that something that can be that we can look at right now?
It's still being worked on. That is one screenshot from it, but that's what I wanted to show during a tribal consultational webinar on the portal, is we will show this demo and then solicit functionality requirements. But the demo hasn't been shown outside of our little group. It's being perfected. It should debut on February 19th.
One more question, and then we'll move on.
No. No.
So we have a date to roll it out, but how do people
No, we don't have a date to roll out the portal. We have a date to do tribal consultation, and then 3 weeks before that, you'll get your formal invitation. And I should say I'm aiming for March, mid-March, on tribal consultation. We have a Federal Register notice out, and that came out January 26th, and those webinar dates will be February 19th, February 23rd, and March 5th, and soon after that will be tribal.
Thanks, Jane. Okay, Lydia.
We have been passing notices along that come out on eEnterprise as well to our Exchange Network listserv for the tribes. So if you guys aren't on that, you can sign up on our website or contact us. Just leave us your email and we'll get you added to that as well. So we'll try to keep you guys all informed as these things move forward. So, all right, thanks. Kurt has a presentation. He does.
All right, Kurt.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go ahead
Can
and
we make it work?
That's the $1 million question. All right.
How are we doing on time, guys? Do you need me to
We're
be brief here? Or
a bit over Lydia time.
I'll talk fast.
Actually, if you can give me 1 moment for some reason.
Sure.
The view. I'm a Mac user, guys. I shouldn't even say that. Sorry.
Okay. Rob's gonna take the floor for a sec. It's this stupid projector setting.
While she is doing that, there's just something I thought I'd mention to you all real quick. The Exchange Network has a very good email list about issues that are going on, Exchange Network issues that you can sign up for at their website. And there was a blast that just came out about EPA releasing Exchange Network grants unliquidated obligations list for January 2015. And in case you're not aware, if you have an Exchange Network grant, if you have excessive unliquidated obligations, you'll automatically lose 10 points in your next project proposal that you submit. And so I looked back at all of the published list of unobligated obligations, and I'm very happy to say not a single tribe was on there. Many states were on there with excessive unliquidated obligations, but no tribe. So good job, everybody. Just be aware of that. Don't let yourself get to the point of not spending your Exchange Network funds because it could hamper you in your future proposals.
Okay, Kurt, so your screen is showing we're ready to go. You've got about 5 minutes, so thank you.
Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. This is K.Rakouskas. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. First, I want to apologize for not being there in person this week. Ordinarily, I would be in the room with everybody there, and I've missed being there this year. My wife and I just had our second child a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't able to get any grandparent backup this week, so I was a little reluctant to leave my wife flying solo. So I really apologize, and I thanks a lot to Lydia and Christina for helping to set up remote access so I could dial in for this portion. I'll try and be pretty brief here and just build a little bit off of Shanna's presentation on eEnterprise, just to give you a flavor for how eEnterprise and the Exchange Network are working together now, and how they're likely to continue to try and build the cooperation and play off one another in the future. It's an evolving relationship. We on the network are still trying to figure out exactly how we fit together with the enterprise, how we can best support one another. I think that the relationship between the two, the goals of the two, are very highly complementary, but it is a work in progress, to be sure. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and then as time allows, touch on some of the work we're doing as part of Phase 2 of the Exchange Network and how that kind of complements and feeds into eEnterprise a little bit. And I forgot to advance my slide. Sorry. So I want to start off just really quickly with the governance connections between the two initiatives. Shanna had this slide in her presentation, so I won't dwell on it here. But the main point I want to make is that there are a lot of parallels between e-enterprise's governance and the exchange network's governance. And a lot of that is due to the fact that the network was used as a thing of a model when the folks that were developing e-enterprise and the blueprint and the concepts behind it, they kind of looked to the network as an example and a model, which was a nice compliment they paid to us. And just like the ENLC, the Exchange Network Leadership Council, e-enterprise is a jointly governed venture. So the EELC there, the E-Enterprise Leadership Council, is the group that kind of sets policies and priorities for e-enterprise. And they can spin off teams that are really similar to the network's integrated project teams. That was a term that came up during Shanna's presentation. And don't get hung up on the name. That's just it's an overly complicated name for a work group is really all it is. So that group, the EELC, can spin up those kinds of teams when they need to gather input or create some kind of a product or a deliverable. And the Exchange Network has kind of been brought into the mix to help manage and oversee some of the technology-related portions of e-enterprise. And there are a couple reasons for that. One is I think folks felt like we had many, if not most of the right types of individuals already in place as members of the ENLC and the Network Technology Board. And it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to stand up separate groups and create a whole new set of calls and meetings for folks to attend. And I think the second reason is it made sense to include the network in the e-enterprise governance is that we're already doing a lot of the right kinds of work in many ways. And this next picture kind of depicts some of that alignment that's happening between the work of the Exchange Network and e-enterprise. So Shanna mentioned the e-enterprise blueprint, and that document identifies a few key components that help to make up e-enterprise, and a couple of them are listed here on the left side of the diagram. So we've got open data and web services for data access. Those are terms that should be familiar to anyone that's had some exposure to the Exchange Network. And the work under that component kind of maps pretty neatly over to the work that the network wants to do in its second phase of life. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what phase 2 is in a minute, but making data easier to access and easier to use is right at the top of the list of those goals. Next is the concept of an e-enterprise portal and the shared services that are going to be required to make that work. Shanna touched on that. That's another area where the Exchange Network has a lot of experience, kind of jointly developing and managing shared tools and services. We've got shared tools like the suite of nodes and plug-in software that are available. Chrome Air services are an example. The virtual exchange services, which I think you guys saw a demo of earlier today. Each of those is going to play a role in supporting the different components of e-enterprise. And we know that we're going to continue to need a host of others. One is a system for managing user identities across different partner organizations so that folks that are coming and using that e-enterprise portal that's envisioned can have as seamless an experience as possible when they're trying to interact with EPA or a state or a tribe. And so there's a lot of new work for the network in that area, and I think it's going to nicely match up with our ability to work jointly on complicated technology projects. So I'll skip some of this in the interest of time, but to make a long story short, I think the network's positioned to play a pretty important role in supporting the technology aspects of e-enterprise, and we're going to continue over time, I think, to see more and more linkages between the two initiatives. And this is, Shanna touched on this a bit, one of the first really substantial areas where we're we're intersecting a bit is on the e-enterprise architecture integrated project team. And again, this is a group that the ENLC chartered at the request of the e-enterprise Leadership Council. And the job of this group is basically to take the very high-level component architecture that was put into the e-enterprise blueprint document and try and turn it into a much richer and more detailed technical architecture for e-enterprise. And I think that architecture is going to be a really important tool for helping everybody understand what this thing is ultimately going to look like, how the different technical components that are envisioned are going to fit together, and hopefully provide some guidelines to help partners in EPA and states and in tribes understand what e-enterprise is, what it looks like, and how to go about building an e-enterprise project. So that group launched in September. It's a pretty big group. It's got about 40 reps from EPA, states, and tribes. We just recently broke that group up into a couple of different work groups to talk specifically about scoping the e-enterprise portal and also gathering some requirements for that shared identity management system that I talked about. They just kicked off work in the last couple of weeks, really in the last week. We've had one call of each group, and so we're still very early on. And if anybody is at all interested in being part of those groups or contributing to them in any way, say the word, let me know. It's definitely not too late because we've really just started to scratch the surface of all this stuff. We're going to meet about every 2 weeks, so it's an aggressive schedule, and that's probably going to go on for the next couple of months, I would imagine. Okay, to this point, I've been focusing primarily on e-enterprise and its interrelationships with the network. I just want to switch gears a little and talk about some of the work that the governance is doing around its Phase 2 priorities. So very quickly, just a quick reminder about what Phase 2 is. It's really about building on the foundation that we laid in the first phase of the Exchange Network, which is where we spent a lot of time putting our technology in place, setting standards, and building out a lot of the regulatory data flows that support reporting to EPA. So the water quality data with the WQX exchange, air quality data with the air quality system exchange, TRI, RCRA, and so forth. And in the plan we put together for Phase 2, the ENLC laid out 4 pretty broad goals for the network. And I think at their heart, the goals are really about getting the right information into the right hands. So they basically boil down to trying to make the Exchange Network easier to use, building a broader community that includes new partners and new participants with some special attention to better understanding what the demand for environmental data looks like, building web services that are more outward-facing and geared toward data access rather than just reporting and submitting data to EPA, and then taking some steps to try and keep budgets in line with these priorities and make sure they continue to be supported into the future. And so I think Phase 2 really opens up a lot more opportunity for tribes. In many ways, it's a lot less limiting than Phase 1 was. That was pretty narrowly focused on the submission of 10 really specific data sets to EPA. And several of those, weren't necessarily all that directly relevant for tribes for a variety of different reasons. So under Phase 2, I kind of think that there are a lot more opportunities available. I know in the last couple of years there have been really creative and innovative grant awards made to tribes under the Network Grant Program covering work on other data sets like habitat preservation and emergency response applications, monitoring environmental impacts on traditional crops and species, and it just opens up opportunities for tribes to get resources, I think, to be consumers of data, which is another maybe pretty important area where there can be some business value. I know the Oneida tribe has really been kind of a leader in this regard. They've been doing a lot of work to get access to RCRA hazardous waste information and other state and EPA data sets and integrate that into their systems and really be a consumer of information using network web services. So I do think Phase 2 is going to be a time where we see the network become more useful and more relevant for tribes going forward. And so we're keying in on a couple broad strategies to try and get at these goals in Phase 2. The first is to more actively look for opportunities to engage communities to help them solve some of their data-related challenges through web services development and innovation. I think we're also kind of shamelessly looking for ways to use the visibility and the political support of e-enterprise to try and help advance some of the network's goals. If that sounds opportunistic, it probably is a little bit. But I do think that the energy around e-enterprise could help open some doors for the network, particularly with respect to finding some new partnership opportunities. And then finally, we're looking to try and embrace new technologies wherever we can, find new ways to add value for network partners. Just digging into these strategies a little bit deeper, I just wanted to quickly mention some of the different data communities that we're engaging with. There's work being done or planned around a couple new different national data flows. There's been a very active team working on ISIS Air, the Exchange for Air Compliance data. There's about to be some activity around a data flow to support the ATTAINS system at EPA. This is the data system that stores water assessment and impairment information, TMDL data. EPA is about to do a complete redesign of that system and convert it to a more centralized, cloud-based data system. And part of that system's capabilities are going to be to support web services for getting data in and out. And I know EPA's Office of Water is gearing up to form an integrated project team under the Exchange Network to provide input into a draft schema and a set of web services for that data. And I expect that's going to launch probably in the next few weeks. Apart from those new national data flows, we've got connections to a few different data communities that have an interest in using the network to support some pretty cool data access initiatives. We've got some groups talking about radiation monitoring, institutional controls, radon test results. We've had some conversations with some key folks in the beaches community on trying to do some work to create some services that would allow folks to share real-time beach closure notification data. And I mentioned that we're going to be looking to make use of e-enterprise to the maximum extent that we can. And again, engaging new data communities is an area where I think e-enterprise is really going to help the network focus its efforts and maybe open some doors for us that might otherwise have remained closed. So we're gearing up to do some joint work that will hopefully help us get a better handle on what the demand for data services look like, as well as kind of create a comprehensive inventory of what work is already being done out there in states, tribes, and EPA. And then finally, we're looking again for ways to make the network easier to use, more efficient, hopefully more broadly appealing. You all saw a presentation on the virtual exchange services and how that tool might be able to help lower some of the barriers to entry on the network. We've taken some steps to embrace some new approaches to designing and building web services that are a little bit simpler and easier to work with. I won't get into any detail on that today, but I will say that we're planning a webinar in the next couple of months that's going to focus on that style of web services that are based on a design called REST. And that'll be a great opportunity to learn how those might be useful for your agencies. Okay, that was a lot to try and cram in. I apologize for talking so quickly. The only thing I'll add is I love getting phone calls and emails, so don't hesitate to reach out anytime you'd like to talk or have a question about something. I'd love to hear from you. And again, somebody already put a plug in for this, but if you haven't already signed up for network email alerts, there's a link to do so here. And I know there's also a terrific separate listserv that ITEP has started. I think we try and make sure that there's cross-pollination between those two. So if you sign up for one or the other or both, you should hear about everything that's happening on the Exchange network. And we include e-enterprise news that has connections to the Exchange network in those alerts too. So it's a good way to stay up to date on things that are going on with e-enterprise that have some connection to the Exchange network as well. So I will shut up now. Sorry if I went a little longer than I should have. Happy to take questions if there are any and if there's time.
Questions for Kurt?
Boy or girl?
Yeah, that's good.
Boy or girl? That's the question.
Oh, that's a boy. Thank you.
All right. 2 for 2, Kurt. 2 for 2.
That was an easy one.
We all have Kurt's contact information. Thanks, Kurt, for joining us, and good luck with the FAM.
Well, thank you guys so much. Again, I apologize for not being there in person.
No worries. All right. We'll be letting you go then.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.